Welcome to Ask Ms. ERP. The topic of this video is what to ask for in ERP contracts. Hello everyone, Ms. ERP here. If you have been following my videos, this is the last in a series of 3. Video number 45 was on what to ask for in demos, number 46 was on RFPs, and this one wraps things up with questions that you should be asking when you are negotiating your ERP services contract. So now we have reached the stage where you have selected your ERP product vendor and are ready to set up a formal relationship. Logically, you would think that the information provided in the RFP response would naturally flow into the contract. But in my experience, this is not always the case, so you do need to be careful. Depending on what product you choose, you may not have a lot of leeway in defining contract terms because the big ERP vendors usually have a standard contract that you must sign. Even more disconcerting is that the contract details may only be at the end of a URL, which means that they can be changed at any time. Your company will have to decide if this is acceptable or not. But assuming that you do have some influence on contract terms, I will try and give you some suggestions of things that you should be asking about. This step will usually take longer than you expect, as there are likely lawyers or contract specialists involved, and the devil is always in the details. Something that would be nice to have before you start this process would be third-party benchmarking for service levels and pricing, if you can get it. This will give you some guidelines for contract negotiations. The first question to ask is what the process will be if you need to change something in the contract or the service in the future. How will a change be managed? Especially if you have a specific number of licenses for a specific functionality, this might be tricky. Some vendors give you a discount based on the dollar amount that you initially spend, and this may make later changes difficult. I highly recommend that you try and get something like a realignment of licensing a year after go live in your contract. Even better would be once a year reset clause. While you may not be able to reduce your overall fee, you may be able to get more of what you do need in exchange for less of something you are not using. An important piece of a contract is to ensure that there are clear service level agreements. Things like availability, response time, resolution time, disaster recovery questions such as how long will it take to get your system back and to what point in time, more commonly known as recovery time objective or RTO and recovery point objective or RPO. What kind of access controls will they have for their own staff? For example, will all of their staff have access to your confidential data? How will they keep the product code current? And how will all of this be reported on? What happens if the service levels are not met? In today's cloud world, many enterprise applications are running on some other cloud provider's infrastructure. This is important to understand for incidents or outages. You do not want your provider to be able to blame someone else for any issues. You can avoid this by having the term provider and all subcontractors, not just provider, in your terms so that another third party cannot be blamed for an issue. I covered quite a bit about pricing in the RFP video, number 46, but to reiterate, you should have these items in your contract. Things such as annual change limitations, what activities are subject to additional charges, are there any incentives or penalties for service delivery, and how are they measured and reported on? As a customer, your only recourse in the event of a problem is to withhold payment. What will happen if you do that? Will they cut your service off? Good to know ahead of time. The contract should define a clear division of responsibilities, especially customer obligations, in the gray areas where there is some overlap. If there's any doubt or question about scope, you can be sure that it will not be in scope as far as your vendor is concerned. An example of this is if you have built some kind of extension using their tools. Will they support this, or are you on your own? Different product vendors have different rules on this. You should also have intellectual property development, ownership, and use rights defined. If your ERP product vendor or a service provider develops something for you, who owns the IP? Another gray area is around integrations. Do make sure you document who is responsible for what and where the handoffs will occur. I suggest that you confirm contractually that data, processes, and internal documentation ownership is clearly defined as belonging to you, the customer. Make sure that compliance, governance, and dispute resolution is also defined. How are issues reported? How do they get escalated? What dispute resolution or arbitration process will be in place if one party disagrees with the other? Most contracts have a limitation of a liability clause, which you may not be able to change. I would just encourage you to actually give this some thought, as financials may not be the biggest risk to you. If you lose your ERP for a day, a week, or a month, what impact will this have on your company? I covered business continuity as part of service tiering in video number 46. Not a fun topic when you are starting off a new relationship, but much better to discuss up front. You need to ensure that you have an exit strategy documented in the contract in case the relationship ends. Think about your cloud application. If you leave, who owns the data and how do you get it? And will they destroy their copy? How long do you have to migrate elsewhere? What is their commitment to help you exit? Hopefully, you have some contract experts internally that can help guide you through this process in detail. My intent with this video was just to give you some tips to help you along your way. This concludes the What to Ask For in ERP Contracts topic. There is a link on askmeserp.com to email me to ask questions or suggest topics for future videos. Or you can just add comments on any YouTube video. Please subscribe to my channel. Thanks, and see you on the next video.